Well, if you haven't heard the awesome news, Nuxt 3 public beta has launched. So, as you probably might have guessed, we are here to do lots of Nuxt 3 things, talk through sort of what's coming, what's still like in flux and that kind of stuff. So yeah, oh man, this is gonna be a fun stream. What's up, Thesis? How's it going, Alex? Good to see y'all. All right. So a couple of things we're going to do, doing it a slightly differently this stream, I think, as well, is that I'm going to switch over to the live stream, so the live screen now. And one of the things I think I want to experiment a little bit more with, I haven't totally got the masking done right, but I like to do more of the full screen recording just because I think, especially as I do a lot of coding things, I do like the little banner at the bottom, but I'd like to figure out a better way to like hide that so that people don't have to deal with that the entire video. So if this becomes, well, let's just say, if it's hard to like deal with like me in the lower right, I'll try to make sure to move it and that kind of stuff. But hopefully this will allow you to just sort of get a better view of everything, and then things can be a bit more full frame this way. Still playing around with the layouts, but hey, speaking of, hey, how's it going, Brendan? So yeah, hopefully this allows people to kind of see more and then see things a little bit more up close. So with that said, I say let's go ahead and get started. So just as like, for those who don't know, basically Vue 3 has been out for about over a year now, and one of the biggest basically frameworks that we've been waiting for that depends on Vue 3 for people to kind of adopt this kind of stuff has been Nuxt 3. And so the community has certainly been waiting with eager anticipation. And yeah, it's just exciting because now it's here. And this is more exciting than an Apple launch. So let's go ahead and kind of take a look. In case you haven't had a chance, they do have a full announcement post as far as what's basically sort of like what's happened with the public beta release. And so the very first thing that I think that's probably worth mentioning here is this little alert right here. Let me blow it up just a little bit more. And it says, do not use in production. So I think this is how we want to start the disclaimer right here is that, well, while Nuxt 3, again, I know plenty of us will be trying it out in side projects and deploying it. If you have a client that's depending on constant uptime, things not breaking and that kind of thing, probably don't want to use Nuxt 3 for that just yet. But if you could afford a little bit more variability, hence side projects and such, certainly I would say Nuxt 3 public beta, at least from what I've seen so far, is quite promising. All right, so a couple of things just to know about Nuxt in general also is that right now with the public beta, the way that you build sites right now is a little bit different than you would normally do it. So here they mentioned here, and so we'll show this, we'll do a lot of live coding in just a bit. But when you run your npm run build, right, which basically runs Nuxt build, those of us familiar with Nuxt 2 are used to Nuxt generate. And so what that typically would do is that would take all your components, build out HTML pages, and that's what you throw onto your deployment servers. Well, at the moment, believe it or not, static is actually still something that's coming. So when we're running the build command, basically there's an output directory, and that kind of takes care of things from there. And we'll get into a little bit on the philosophy behind this and what this empowers the framework to be able to do, especially as more features come down the pipeline. But yeah, it's quite exciting. All right. And so one of the big things, if you hadn't heard about with Nuxt 3, is that Nuxt Nitro is a really big part of it. And so basically think of Nuxt Nitro as like the back end that powers all of the Nuxt things. So it basically does a bunch of back-endy things that we don't have to worry about as front-end developers, and then we get to just build cool things and it kind of works. Although I just realized that we should be clicking on this one. It's a server engine. It's like when you run npm run dev. In fact, this is not even a Nuxt thing. Just clients, sort of the frameworks in general that have CLIs, they always have something running on the back end so that you can do things like hot module reload and all that stuff. And Nitro is just the new engine that's powering Nuxt 3. All right, so other than that, I think there's a nice little overview of various things, but I think, you know what, let's go ahead and let's dive into some code, shall we? So the first thing first, when it comes to getting started, let's go ahead and actually just jump right into the docs. There you go. We have another warning right here. Do not use in production. So let's kind of keep on with this. Okay, as far as prerequisites go, we can see nothing too special. We have Node, VS Code, and then so if you haven't been sort of keeping up, Vtur used to be the old sort of like, or it's still the most popular VS Code extension for Vue 2 projects, but it looks like going forward for Vue 3, you're definitely going to want to install Volar, which is right here, so you can go ahead and install that, and that works, seems to work better with Vue 3, especially when it comes to TypeScript and that kind of thing. That said, let's build an app. Alvaro here. Nitro reminds me of Crash Bandicoot. Yep, definitely think of racing when I hear Nitro for sure. So I imagine that was some of the inspiration. All right, so let's... Whoa. All right, here we go. Let me move the terminal over here. All right. So first thing first, how do we initialize a Nuxt project? Well, for those who have used it in the past, you probably ran something along the lines of npm or npx like create Nuxt app, right? You ran like a CLI tool. Well, with the Nuxt 3, there's a whole slew of tooling that's kind of coming along. And one of those things being basically a new CLI prompt. And so if we jump back over to I think, is it this page right here? You'll see that Nuxi is mentioned. Where is Nuxi? Is it not on this page? Okay, it's somewhere else. Nuxi is the new CLI tool, basically. So instead of a create Nuxt app CLI tool, it is now called Nuxi. So the way we go ahead and scaffold it, basically, is that we say npx. And so npx, for those who don't know, is basically just your way of like using the CLI tools without installing it all locally. So basically npx Nuxi, and then Nuxi what? What do we want to do? We want to init our project. So this feels a little bit more CLI-like, because some of the times I feel like with other ones you have a weird like... Well, anyways, commands are a little bit trickier. But now you can actually init, manually init, and then let's go ahead and choose a project to init. So we're going to just go ahead and say Ben Code Zen Twitch 18. I'm just going to init this project so that we can go ahead and push that up to GitHub later so that people can take a look and play around with it. And so you can see that was actually pretty close, or quick. It's gone ahead and brought everything in. So let's go ahead and change directories. And I personally prefer to use Yarn, so I'm going to go ahead and use Yarn and just go ahead and install the dependencies in here. And then, while, oh, it finished before I could switch. Oh, whoops, I should be using the LTS version. My bad. All right, there we go. Now we can yarn. Okay, excellent. While that's happening, let's go and take a look at what inside the Nuxt 3 project. So, my window manager having a little bit of trouble there. Okay. So what we see here at the very top, actually, let me blow this up. 1, 2, 1. There you go. That's good. We can see here that it's actually really, really simple. In the past, if you've ever scaffolded a Nuxt app, you probably noticed there's a lot of different directories that had these placeholder files to be like, if you want to do this, put a file here, etc. But I think one thing that's nice about this particular scaffold is that it keeps it to the bare bones, so that basically you can start to do things as you need and basically add it on yourself. So inside of here, let's go ahead and take a look. So we have our package.json here, and all it has is just the Nuxt 3 latest. That's all, only dev dependency in here. And so a little bit weird though, I'm wondering why none of my stuff installed. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick. I saw an error earlier, that's why I'm restarting the process. I'm gonna watch it a little bit closer this time. And so, hey, how's it going, Jacob? Lee Martin Dev here. Yep, there you go, I see, yep. Bare bones, that's right. So what we see here is that it's really trying to, I think, one of the things I found when I was introducing Nuxt to people in the past is that, especially if they were newer to sort of these meta frameworks and weren't sure what everything was, it was kind of a lot to be like, here are all the options that are available for you. But with this now, you get the sense of like, you basically only focus on the key ones and it kind of goes from there. The one thing I do need to do actually is to make sure that, okay, that's already been changed. Great. All right, so everything's been installed. We have our yarn log file, perfect. And now, what do? We're just gonna start up the dev server. So I'm gonna run yarn dev, and there we go, we're at 3,000. So let me go ahead and open up this, bump it over to 1/3, and let's go ahead and open this up, shall we? All right, so with that, you can see now that we have a scaffolded page right here. and everything's good to go. And all it's coming from is right here inside of this Nuxt component. Although, very interestingly enough, I'm kind of curious where this is coming from. Because if you see, we have this Nuxt welcome component, but I don't see a components folder. So I see a question here from Alvaro. So as far as Vite goes, it's currently basically in a sort of experimental mode. They are planning to have Vite basically do a lot of the support, but at this point they're doing Webpack 5 along with Vite. So they're basically like doing a bit of a hybrid approach, and then over time people can choose basically what works best for them from what I've seen. So with that, we have this. So let's go ahead and make a couple of changes. See, hello Twitch, save. And then, here you go. It's all the way down here. Okay, so it's clear to me that at least in the initial bundle, when they ship it to you, there is a sort of like, there's a component clearly being shipped as far as this piece. I'm kind of curious where it is, or if it's something that we could theoretically modify to remove this welcome. Nope. Okay, so that's part of the bundle. It's almost like, think of this as something that's like built in as a scaffold to let people get started, but otherwise it's not going to be shipped with your bundle, which, to be honest, I like this a lot. And the reason for this is because a lot of times when you get like your Hello World create whatever app, you have all these components that are like default there, which is nice, but then that meant like every single new project I had to basically go in and delete said component and be like, I don't need Hello World anymore. I don't need tutorial anymore. And so the nice thing about this one is going, hey, look, we know that you're just getting started. There's a very, very good chance, almost a guarantee, you won't need this Nuxt welcome component. So no more boilerplate for you to delete, which I think is great. Okay, Arneka here saying that it's probably in the Nuxt folder. Let's find out, because we're developers. We like figuring out where things are. So let's go ahead and go inside of Nuxt. Let's see, views, document template, Nitro index. So there's a bunch of stuff happening here. Is there a, what's the component called? It's called Nuxt welcome. Is there a welcome file in here? No welcome text in here. How about dist? Dist, we see some server stuff. Here we go. So looks like, here it is. It is inside of the node modules Nuxt 3 dist app components welcome.view. So as we sort of expected, it's something that's being shipped sort of as part of the package to get you up and running, but not committed to your project in a way that makes you have to actually delete it and basically take an extra step, which I think is super nice. So very cool. And with that, gosh, I think we're ready to take a look at some code, shall we? So one of the things that I particularly love about when going from Vue 2 to Vue 3, and what I'm hoping to see here, is that from Nuxt to Nuxt 3, we should actually see a lot of similar features, but basically with a lot more cool bells and whistles. So, you know, I basically, inside of Twitter, I had asked about different things that we could do to build things together. And so I got a lot of fun recommendations, but I figure let's go ahead and in like the first 10 minutes, let's go ahead and just let's build the traditional to-do app and see what the difference is between the various things and see how far we can get with what we know. So let's kick it off, shall we? Well, the first thing I'm going to want to test, to be honest, is let's test the routing, because we're going to have different things we're going to want to do with this. So since we're going to keep this app generic enough that it's going to be pushed up. In fact, you know what I want to do? Oh, I just realized. Let me go ahead and turn off that notification real quick in case it's bumping up. Do not disturb. Excellent. Okay. So before actually we move on, what I want to do really quickly is let's go ahead and initialize a repo for this. And so I git init. So there you go. Now I have my Git directory, and then I'm going to go ahead and use the GitHub CLI to do GitHub repo. I think it's create. There you go. Ben Kozen, Twitch 18. I'll rename that later. Description, don't worry about it. It's public. Yes. And then it's created. Excellent. So now I can add all this stuff, and I'll say config initialize Nuxt 3 scaffold, and I'm going to push up every single time. I should probably alias this at this point. There you go. Push that up. All right. So if I do GitHub repo view web with this argument, that will automatically open the direct repo here. Great. This is the minimum scaffold. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this in the chat for anyone who wants to bookmark it for later. But this is what we're going to use to basically rapid build stuff and just test the abilities of what we know from Nuxt 2, how it transfers over to Nuxt 3, and how we can leverage the Vue 3 stuff as well. All right. Now that we have this, now I feel comfortable to go ahead. Let's go ahead and start up the server again. Excellent. And let's dive right in. All right. So Maya main here with a great question is, where is the page folder? Well, basically what has happened now here with Nuxt 3 is that they've taken the starter kit, at least for right now, it is the bare minimum files that you need for a Nuxt app. And I think there's a lot of power in that, to be honest, because what this means is that we can focus on basically getting into the app, and then you can basically progressively enhance your app as you need it. As opposed to before, where people who weren't ready for things like layouts, stores, and that kind of thing, a lot of time it ended up being boilerplate. So I can't imagine I was the only one, but a lot of people probably spent time deleting those folders actually because they're like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't need plugins yet. What the heck is this thing? So rather than go that way, it's more like start with the essentials of getting started. And then as you need more, go ahead and build it forward. Granted, they may change the initial scaffold from Nuxt going forward, but I think as far as like a public beta release, this is really nice because we can progressively enhance it from here. But, and since you asked about this feature, this is the first thing we need anyways. The first app we're going to build within this page, to be honest, is a to-do app, just to make things simple, to make sure like we're not confused about feature complication. We're just going to build things. So I'm going to create this pages folder, and this time I'm going to create an index.view instead. And you already notice, oh, I like that infographic, or not even infographic, that like little illustration of like, I'm lost in the forest. I like it. All right, so index.view is going to be our holding point. But what's interesting is that it looks like once Nitro has detected you've created a pages folder, it's overridden this app.view entry. So that right now, if we put, again, that hello Twitch, save, it's not actually appearing, which shows you that basically the default state is the moment you have a page directory, you probably don't need this app.view. So I'm going to go ahead and delete app.view. And instead, inside of here, let me just open up the single file component. And then I'm going to say, hello Twitch number 2, save. And now if we refresh, okay, excellent. Now we were back to kind of what we would expect. We have the component. We are now back in our pages directory. So let's go see if our instinct is right for the rest of the stuff. Let's go ahead and add our to-do page. And to-do will have its own index page because we want to actually go here directly. And then I'm just going to go ahead and say this here is a to-do app. And then inside of our pages here, we're just going to say, so this will be homepage. And then just so that we have a little bit of navigation, let's just do a Nuxt link. Again, I'm just doing this purely based on what I already know about Nuxt because I want to see how much of the API is the same from what I would expect. So we're going to go to /to-do and then to-do app like this. So once we have it here, we click. Looks like we have navigated. So looks like that might have been a caching thing. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. It is blank right now. Let's see. I see some stuff in the chat. Unlike Nuxt, you don't need a page folder to run a single page app. If it is a single page, build it off app.view. Once you add pages, view router is included. Yep. There you go. Lee Martin there with a great explanation. Yes, absolutely love the fact that they have that sort of, again, progressive enhancement idea. So I wonder why it did not like this particular transition, because here we have the to-do. Is it because I have to do /index? Nope, that's definitely not it. Index.html? Nope. Okay. See, when I go to the link directly here, that's fine. But it's almost like it didn't like it when it was the home page /to-do. That's an interesting, again, that might be a bug to be totally honest, but let's go ahead and componentize this because that's the next thing we probably want, right? We want components. So I'm just going to create a simple main nav.view. Ooh, that's not what I wanted. Main nav.view. And then inside of here, we're just going to have a component. And then again, we'll keep it really simple. We'll do a nav element. It'll be a list item. And then we're just going to go v for item in nav links. And then we'll have, basically we'll design it as Nuxt link to item.url. And then after we have the to, then we want item.label. That's what we're gonna do. So this is a pretty simple one. I'm just gonna add class main nav. And then I'm gonna do the main nav here. And then inside of main nav, we'll just quickly do a display flex so that it's all in one row. Whoop, that's not what I wanted. I want to flex. And then flex is here, great. And then we'll just keep the default here. So I'll just say, ooh, they are pretty good with the autocomplete, but I don't want any of that. I just want the data property to be honest, and I just want to say nav links. And we're gonna have two of them right now. We're gonna have the label, which will be home. URL is just this, and then the label of to do, URL of this. Okay, so to see if this works, I'm assuming based on the fact that they've done default component basically default component import from the basically Nuxt 2, I have a sneaking suspicion that it already is being imported. So if I do main nav, I think that would actually work. Oh, it did not. It did not auto import. So maybe this is a config that would eventually need to happen. Maybe if I do components true, like this, reloads the backend. So again, see, what I'm doing here is I'm sort of using the API I'm used to see if I broke something. It's okay. There we go. What did I break? All right, that's fine. Let's check the chat while I restart what I broke. It's to-do.view in pages. Yep, it's in pages. So it's in under pages to do and then index.view. So that shouldn't be the problem. Client navigation broken, but server-side rendering. What is the mode of this project? Okay, for some seamless Walsh. So basically, the mode of this project right now is just your standard, basically your npm run dev. So as far as I'm aware, we're basically in standard client-side mode. I don't think we're in like a server-side rendering kind of bit. So that's at least my initial impression. Ooh, plan, you're getting ahead of me. I will get to that, I promise. To your question. Okay, oh, look, it is working. Why is it working? What did I break? Did I do something? It was okay now? It's only okay? All right, what the hey. So main nav is importing the way I thought it would. The only question now here is why didn't my styles get applied here? Main nav here is good. I'm happy with that. But main nav display flex, oh, it's because the UL needs to be applied. So if that happens, it looks like that. Okay, that's fine. I'll deal with that later. Just for sake of quickly having some margin left, 30 pixels, save. So it looks like it's not totally detecting CSS changes just yet. But again, this is beta, so remember, let's keep this all in mind. So I'm just pushing the limits of like what I'm expecting from typical. So okay, that's fine, not a big deal. I can deal with the come refreshes for now. I know I completely trust the team to fix that. Okay, so we have our navigation up top. This is great. All right, so now that we have this, can we toggle between the two? Still has a interesting thing where like I have to manually refresh. So that's like you know what, I'm just gonna take a little note in Obsidian then for me to like things that I've noticed. Transition to to-do page is acting weird, needs reload. All right, and then okay, so now that we have this, let's talk about Plan's question here regarding basically Vue 3's feature. And so with Nuxt 3, you would hope, one would hope that the features that are being released in Vue 3 will automatically basically be included inside of Nuxt 3. And so the one thing that basically Plan had mentioned is around the idea of script setup, because as you all might have heard at this point, composition API is a pretty big deal when it comes to writing code these days with Vue. So let's start with a progressive migration, right? So the first thing I'd want to do, to be honest, is let's go ahead and say, I'm going to make nav links an empty array real quick. And so there you go, that removes it as expected. Let's migrate this to the setup function, and I'm gonna say const nav links 2 equals, and then I'm gonna have a ref here that's an array that contains all of these things, and then I'm gonna return nav links 2, and then there should be a space there, and then we just need to make sure we import ref from view. So if this works as expected, we should see, I'll add basically, I'll switch this out to navlinks2 and save. And if we're lucky, there we go. So our setup did work correctly. So this means we could delete this data, delete this navlinks2 just to make it navlinks. And then if we save, nothing should break at this point. Uh-oh. Oh, wait, I'm silly. I did not return this one. Now we return it. Now it's great. Okay, and now the coup de grace, the newest Vue 3.2 feature here is script setup. So in other words, all this boilerplate we can get rid of by simply adding the setup attribute, deleting the export here. We didn't delete the setup because we are already telling script we're in the setup block. And because of some compiler optimizations that we can do, this now means that we can actually remove this return and save. And if this works as expected, I should be able to add another one. So let's call this, I'll call the next one library, because we were talking about book reviews. So this will be, oh, the autocomplete actually did the right thing. All right, so now that I have this, refresh. Okay, so hot module, I would say refresh is definitely something that's a little bit tricky at the moment. I'm sure they're working on it. So that said, it looks like script setup is working as expected. Now, here's the thing though. I'm wondering, does the vbind style work with this? And so what do I mean by this? Well, let's say that inside of this nav class, I'm gonna provide an input that's a color picker, input type color. And so if you didn't know this thing existed, whoops, I'm actually gonna add it at the very left. I'll add it at the last list item for this, and then like this. There we go, excellent. Check this out. You get a native color picker with HTML. This is not a Vue component. This is just built into the browser, which I totally love. And so based on this value they pick here, let's just say that I want to change the color of the background to the like the link that I've clicked on, basically. So if I click on something, I want to actually say like, does this route match? So if we're going to do that, basically, I would need to just hook this up then. So I would say, okay, so here's a ref. I'm going to say user color is equal to ref. I'll make that an empty string. And then I'll say vmodel, the user color, like this. And to make sure this works, I'm going to go ahead and add a P here that renders out user color to see what we get. And so here, when we click and move, you'll see that the hex code is automatically being dynamically attached. Great, piece of cake. Now, what I want to do now is apply it to the CSS. So in other words, what I probably need to see is one, if I'm on the home page, if Nuxt, as you would hope, has actually kept up its router link active. And we can see here that it does, which is exciting. So what this means now is I could do main nav. Inside of main nav, I want the router link active. And if it's router link active, right, to show that this even works, let's do a background color of red. So we save this, let's refresh. Excellent, red shows up. This is what we want. Now, the question is, how can we change this dynamically? Well, now that we have this user color, normally what you might do is you'd go into like an inline style and try to update it, but no. We're using CSS. We're going to use what the browser is built for. And again, one of the things I love about Vue and its philosophy is we want to use user color. But we don't just use user color because, again, this will actually just render as a plain string. We need to tell the compiler when it does the build step that we can bind it basically like this, saying that it's Vue. And let's see if this works. This is a question at this point for me. I don't even know if this will work. So if I refresh, okay, that's already promising. The red has disappeared. Yes. Most excellent. So all of 3.2 things have been, I would say, at least the stuff we're testing, has worked. So we can see here, cool, we can actually like configure the active link background color just with like a little color input, which is fantastic. Okay, So now that we have that, I'm deleting this. And then, all right, so we got to play around a little bit with 3.2 features. And then we also like have a basic navigation now. So I detracted a little bit, but that's okay. We're just gonna go that and then commit feature, add basic navigation with 3.2 features. Excellent. All right. Now, I said that I would do a quick to-do app because I know a lot of us have been done it already. But again, we want to see the context within basically Nuxt using it. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So what we're going to do now is, all right, I'm going to set the timer. I'm going to do this let's see what I can do in 5 minutes. So we have index.ts here. Let's go ahead and switch over to that page. Again, I'll do the refresh. So we're here. Excellent. All right. So a couple things we need to do. One, we need to be able to render a list of the task. So since we're going to talk about new shiny things, I'm going to go ahead and just do script setup as well. And I'm going to go ahead and import. This time, I'm going to use reactive rather than ref. And so what this means is I'll have a data property, to do store, and it'll be a reactive object. And then I'll be like task list will be an empty array. All right. So the way this is going to work then is we're going to say, let's render out in a list all of the tasks in to-do store.task list. And then we're just going to go ahead and actually we need a key. So our key is going to be task.id. And then we will just render out the task.label. So just to make sure something shows up because, you know, again, I have ID1, label, and then we're just going to say ramen, save. Okay, ramen shows up. Great. Next thing we want to do is actually go ahead and then say, let's go ahead and input task to it. So here's our input. We will go ahead and vmodel this to a user task input string. And then we'll say that. And then again, just for sake of prototyping, on enter, we want to say add new task. So we need a couple of things here. We need the const user task input. I don't need this to necessarily be, actually, you know what I'm going to do? No, I have the to-do store already module. I'm not going to separate this out. I'm going to go ahead and do this more of a monolith approach. So this will be an empty string, which means vmodel needs to be to-do store dot user task input. And then finally, when we hit the new one, then we can create a add new task function. And that will say, ooh, that is pretty darn good. I'm not going to lie. But I'm going to go ahead and do that manually. To do store dot task list. And then we're going to push. What are we going to push? We're going to push the, user task input is technically not true. We know that the ID, that's interesting. What algorithm did it give me for that one? It said, all right, anyways, ID is going to be to do length +1. I do like that actually. And then the label, wow, it already anticipated that. That's fine. I like it. Push, label. And then at the end of it, we'll say to do store user input reset to 0. Wow, that was good. All right, refresh. And we have here, so if we do milk, enter. Ooh, on enter did not call anything, or if it did, I wasn't aware of it. What happened here? Oh, I think, I see something in the chat. I need to take a look at it in a second, which is great. Why did at enter? Oh, shoot. I'm silly. Key up.enter. That's the task. I skipped too many things. Milk. Excellent. Bento. All right. Works exactly as we expect. So same as your question. Yes, the Voodoo is GitHub Copilot. That's as far as like sort of jumping a bit ahead as far as anticipating what I'm looking for. But Chris here with the excellent, let me go ahead and commit this. So this is our simple to-do app. Ooh, I still have like, okay, so 2 minutes. Okay. What if Chris is saying here that we need to include the Nuxt page inside of index.view for routing? Oh dear. Nope, I definitely did not do that. That's what I did too quickly. All right, so that means Nuxt page like this. Save, refresh. All right, so if this worked as expected, home to do. Maybe it's a layouts thing. Because index home page. All right, this is actually a good time to test out layouts, I just realized. So if we go to the Nuxt 2 documentation, right? Learn docs. Let's do layouts directory. Okay, let's see. So there's that Nuxt. Yup, Nuxt header footer. App usage with. All right, let's see what people have here. Users with pages. To display the current page, to use the Nuxt page component. Since uses. Since uses suspense, we recommend it to wrap it into a single root element. The only thing about this that's a little bit weird, though, is... So if you have a pages directory, and to display the current page, display the app... Are they saying I was mistaken? Oh, was I mistaken for deleting app.view? Maybe that was my mistake. Because what y'all are saying, at least what I'm seeing here in the page, is y'all are saying I should do this instead. And then if I save, last time this broke everything though, but maybe not. Okay, so inside app.view, yep, that's what I'm in now. So app.view is here again. Let's simplify the code. None of this. We just have the Nuxt page, which is fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and save, and let me go ahead and check this real quick. Error transforming plugin server. You know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and restart the server just to make sure nothing's too funky here. Nuxt is clearly starting. App.view exists. When app.view exists, we can see it's generating the TS file. Nitro built. Okay, homepage does work. To do now works as expected. Okay, so that was a mistake I made. So thanks to Chris and Lee Martin here on the assist. So it looks like what happened, it was that I sort of assumed that, like, well, since I don't need app.view anymore, everything else kind of ingests accordingly. Then I was like, oh, I'm good. So it's neat to know that, like, app.view, it sounds to me, then basically becomes a sort of like default layout page for the rest of your app, assuming you don't need anything else. Because I was about to dive into like doing layouts with the components. So as you can see here, layout, context, return blog. There are different ways to do this. Determine layout blog. I wonder how you do that in the composition API. But okay. So if that's the case, that means that on our homepage, I can actually strip out the main nav, and we can just drop it into the app.view here. And so when we do that, what we should get, it should look, yeah, I know that library doesn't exist. Okay, interesting. Now it's suddenly not liking this. Hang on, let me go ahead and add, maybe it's not liking the fact that I created a route for library. So if that's the case, new folder, library, I'm going to do index.view, sfc, h1 library, save, excellent. Okay, to do app, home. Yeah, it's interesting. It's blanking out now all of a sudden. Is it because of the main nav I added? Let me save that and take that out. Because if that's the case, I have it here. I would drop it back into this. Oh, wait, why does this should not have a Nuxt page. Okay, that's good. And then let me switch, drop in the main nav component here, switch. That did not work. Okay. Huh, I thought we just solved it for a second, but then here, so if I go to do, that's fine. But I wanted to route inline, so I add main nav in here. Main nav here, home, to do, library, to do, library. Looks like it's still a weird caching thing. Because it looks interesting. It looks like fail to insert node before new node is inserted. So something about the transition element and how it's hydrating is acting a little funky. My guess is here. Yeah, I mean, it works on like the first load, right? You can see that when I switch, this is good. But when I switch back, and then it kind of like breaks. So I wonder what I did wrong inside of here to make that a thing, because Nuxt app is only in one place. But okay, that's fine. So far, honestly, so good. And so let's go ahead and just commit what we have here so far. What have we done? We have gone ahead. Okay, so we've sort of fixed semi working nav. Okay. Yeah, try wrapping. Oh, hey, Daniel's in the chat. What is up, Daniel? If y'all don't know, if you don't already follow Daniel, please subscribe to him. He's also on Twitter. Daniel is on the Nuxt core team, and honestly, it's been an absolute joy getting to work with him, and a lot of the work that we see and love about Nuxt, especially with Nuxt 3, can be attributed to him as well as other members of the team, but give it up for Daniel. Okay, so View Gilmore says app.view, you don't think app.view is required. That's what I thought as well, View Gilmore. But then when we deleted app.view, it just wasn't transitioning, period, which was kind of interesting. So okay, so let's try Daniel's suggestion first. Is that like maybe it needs a single root div for like attach. Well, my only thing is that, okay, maybe not library. I don't want to test library out. It was just between home and to do. And maybe I had attempted the multi-root thing too early. Oh, that is probably the problem. Because, yeah, I think Daniel's right. So this is also actually technically a problem with Vue 3 as well. In the sense that, like, when you have components and you're writing in multi-root apps, you need to be very, very explicit about where things go. And so if you're transitioning pages, it is a tricky business. So here, now that has a div, this should be fine. There's only one root. So that, yep, that definitely fixed it. So, I wonder, Daniel, I think maybe we need, like, if people are having errors with that transition, probably need to surface the error to mention whether or not they're using, or we probably could detect that they're using multi-root node. Because it is a page, really. A page should honestly be wrapped in some sort of main element anyways. So that is an interesting use case. Did it mention that? Oh my gosh. Am I just being silly? Ecomath here with the, okay, you know what we're going to do? Okay, so to prove my theory, we are deleting the divs. All right, so we refresh. We go to do. It's fine. Go. Here we go. So here we go. So it does complain about the transition. That the non-element root node cannot be animated. Yeah, I would say that, like, I think if people are more familiar with the kind of inner workings of it, I think they might be able to like sort of reverse engineer the cause here. But I would say this is probably a case where if the transition can't be attached, it sounds like a large, probably at least hinting towards the multi-root issue would probably be a good thing to mention. Okay, so this is now working exactly as we expect. Daniel for the save, thank you very much. Okay, so now we gotta test this other thing. So fix client routing issue due to multi-root component. Okay, so the real question is actually, did we actually need app.view? I think that is actually the question. So if we delete this, we're gonna lose a bunch of stuff. But this will be interesting to see how this works. So let's refresh. What did I break? I broke something. I think it's because it's already been, I think that super broke things. So now that we don't have an app.view and we just have pages, Generating Nuxt.d.ts, Vite warmed up, Nitro's up and running. Homepage is good. Okay, so with that, if I go now to index.page, let's add our main nav back in here and save. Now we can see it's acting a little funny. Because I think, as we had sort of derived as well, that without something to attach, like without the app.view, I think the reason first of all, I think the reason why Nuxt is able to continue rendering pages, right? So if we go to /to-do, it actually works exactly as expected. So let me go ahead and actually add main nav here into to-do app. So if I save it here, it's great. You'll see that it like kind of does it, but not really. And I think part of it is that there is some optimizations that the Nitro engine is doing, from what I understand, that allows it to kind of almost like a SSR, like server-side render the route on its own. But without the app.view, it does seem like we're running into issues as far as like that client transition, which to some extent makes sense, right? Because it's like under what context? But maybe it's because we need a layout's default. Maybe this is another way to try to solve it. So let's go ahead. Let's explore now. Let's continue layering on our features. So inside of the layout here, we have default. I believe it's default.view actually. And then to see if this even works at all, we're just going to have a div here. And then, no, I don't want all that junk. And then, sure, I'll take the default layout here. But what I do want to do instead is do Nuxt page here. And I wonder to see if this does anything. Is it layouts? I might have messed up. It might be layouts folder. It's the layouts directory. I messed up. Layouts, save, Vite server built, refresh. Layouts here, home to do. Nothing so far. Layouts default. Well, I mean, that shouldn't have broken anything. To do is here, but the layouts are not being inherited automatically, but this might be intentional. Let's see real quick. Layouts custom view slot where the page will be loaded. Yep. Nuxt layout custom. Ooh, that's really cool. Ba-bum-bum-bum. If you only, so here we go. Documentation is wonderful. If you have a single layout, we could alternatively use app.view. Okay, so we actually did prove that. I did prove that earlier. And so what we're seeing here is that if you create a layout/default.view, this will be used for all pages in your app. Okay, so maybe the issue here, just to start and restart here, let's reboot the server just to make sure it actually detects the layout directory. And if this works, what we should hopefully be seeing is the H1 for default layout showing up. So that's coming. Things are being generated. Default layout is showing up. Excellent. And then this time now, okay, so that was a server restart thing, it looks like. The only thing, though, is that Nuxt page is no longer the component. It is Nuxt that needs to actually render it into here. So now that we have this, Nuxt is a unable to resolve component. Nuxt, what's going on? Div, footer. Oh, wait. I am so silly. Why am I looking at the Nuxt 2 docs? Slot to define where page content will be loaded. For example, dir. Okay, that's what I get for having two different versions of the docs open. So basically, we have a generic slot that's dropped in. And there you go. Now everything shows up. Oh, Daniel here also with the suggestion of Nuxt page. That apparently might work as well. Let's give that a shot. Nuxt page, save. Looks like Nuxt page is not. So it's weird. I think Nuxt page worked on app.view. So when you're inside of app.view or probably inside of other components, it does seem like Nuxt page does something. But in the particular case right now, at least from... It looks like, again, actually, and to be honest, I kind of like this. I like the fact that it says, here's the default slot. And then, of course, what are you going to slot in your layout? You're gonna slot that directly. And so this is quite cool to me because now you can then define different things within different slots, name, custom. This is kind of cool. Not a problem, Daniel. Appreciate the assist. Okay, so what this means now is I can take this and turn this into main nav. So if this works as expected, then I think I solve my problem in a way that's, call it a little bit more of a Nuxt style of doing things, which is basically rather than, or what we're, sorry, when I say Nuxt style, I mean Nuxt 2, what I'm used to from Nuxt 2. What I'm used to from Nuxt 2 is defining all like my global layouts and stuff in the layouts directory accordingly. And then in my pages, I no longer worry about this stuff because it'll get ingested to do. There you go. And now that we have a proper layouts defined, the client transition does work. So it's kind of interesting. It looks like, from my end at least, let me swap out the main nav here so we don't get a double instance of it. Library, wait. Oh, wait. I took it out of this. I need to take it out of to-do. To-do doesn't need a main nav, save. Okay, so when creating a Nuxt app, I wonder if there's a way we can do like a guard for this inside of detect. But basically, you either need an app.view or we need to have a default.view automatically defined for users. Because either that or the only thing I can think of that might, which would actually be very like to the Nuxt 3 philosophy, is I would think that actually maybe the Nuxt build needs to actually automatically ship a default.view inside. Like the moment it detects that view router should be included, that layouts.view basically is, it's, I think in this regard, it's similar to the welcome component that it automatically ships with this div slot component. And I think that would help probably remove some of the foot guns from people doing exactly what I did, which was like either they thought they didn't need app.view and deleted it, and they went straight to more of the layouts pages structure that they're used to from Nuxt 2. But then in case you're not defining their default view, this way you prevent the client transition bug that people might automatically have, because they're probably assuming that without anything else that they probably are expecting, you know what, I'm going to try real quick. Let me just delete the div and then we could just ship the slot. Is it not gonna like this? Oh, it might not like it. Okay, slot. Then now I gotta go back. And then now I really do need a single div because main nav is gonna be here. And then to do, that's good. Home's good, library's good. Okay, so even just shipping, I think, a component as simple, oh, not this one. I think just shipping this, honestly, having this automatically be imported for people would probably be adequate. And then obviously the moment they add a default.view, then we'd be able to do that. Okay, so sorry for the delay on the question plan, but let's go ahead and fix this bug for real this time with our div. And we're gonna go ahead and add our main nav in here. So we have it, excellent. I'm gonna wipe this out from the index.view page. And with that, I think we've actually fixed our bug fully, and we're doing it with layouts and stuff, which is awesome. Okay, so all this stuff has been done. Great, fix client routing with default layout. Excellent. Okay, so how's it going, Aussie boy? We want to talk about multiple slots in layouts. I actually do think this is quite cool because rather than having a like component like Nuxt page or whatever, I think this further like leverages what people know about Vue to begin with. So it looks like to me, when I'm looking at the documentation, there is the ability for people to define where the components are going. So in this particular sense, we have the ability to define different types of slots. So theoretically then, we should be able to define a slot within default view with a name of header. And then let's do a slot name with the name of footer, just to test this out. Based on this, nothing should change All right, so we have default content, my default header here. So if you didn't know, what this does, if you pass an element inside of a slot, it'll basically, like, if nothing gets passed, that's what will show up. So if I'm like copyright new date dot get full year, then there you go, copyright 2021. That will be what basically gets sort of included. Now the question here is, how do we, and actually I like to do this personally. At this point, I'm just gonna say default, and that should still work. Yeah, default's still there. I just like including the name default just because it's just a little bit cleaner for me. Okay, so the question here is, how do we then do this differently? Well, this is where let's try something. So if homepage is here, and then let's go ahead and add some lorem ipsum. So let me go ahead and do some lorem ipsum insert paragraph. That's good. And then let's actually add a little bit more lorem ipsum here. Now this is basically wrapped like this. If I wrap this in a template and then give it a vslot of header, let's see what happens. This probably won't work the way I think it will. Yeah, okay, that did not work the way I wanted it to. Because, which makes sense. I actually think it probably didn't make sense for me to do this. But with the layout with slots, then you'd have to actually use the Nuxt layout component. Okay, that's what I anticipated. Which means we would wrap all of this in a Nuxt layout. Nuxt layout name that we're using the default layout. And inside of the default layout, to see that this works, we can save. If this worked as expected, our paragraphs are showing up, which is great. What's kind of interesting to me, though, is that we're getting a double rendering of the layout, which is kind of funny. But then now if I actually do my template here, it did not like that. Oh, that's why. Because we need to wrap this stuff, I think, in a template. So let's see, wrap that. Let me delete this. Okay, so default vslot equals default. Did not like that. Okay, that worked. I wonder, did I get the shorthand incorrect? Okay, then that's here. Then what we're saying is, even if I include down here the template vslot, although I was sworn that was right, that would go ahead and jump it up here. Okay, Aussie Boy here with an interesting comment here. It'd be cool to use the layout attribute on the template block, same like script setup, Nuxt laying T. It'd be cool to have template layout dashboard on index.view. What do you think, rather than layout option in component level? Ooh, that is a great question. Okay, so let's recap this then. So for people sort of watching the recording of this later on, basically the question here, or the idea here, is that rather than using a component Nuxt layout, wouldn't it be neat if the compiler could do something like this instead? And then you would kind of like imagine you would take this out like that. That is actually a pretty interesting concept. Granted, it looks like there is some error handling here. Set layout. Oh, there you go. Okay, that's what I'm doing wrong. Layout false. Refresh. Hey, there we go. Default header, homepage. Okay, excellent. Whoop. Let's see, Daniel with the save here. So that is good to know. So let's see, Nuxt layout. Yeah, way to read the docs. Good job, Ben. So as we can see here, you do need to define the layout as false. Of course, my question I'm curious about is, okay, so that's that. Layout custom, I do like that slot. Okay, so this is really, really nice because now you have the ability to do sort of like global control of like layouts at this level from like the layouts directory. But then the moment a specific page needs to do something slightly different, right? But still leveraging most of it, leveraging slots properly here would actually allow you to almost use your layouts as like basically a base component, and then you can like do fun stuff with it. So really, really happy with this overall design. I do think Aussie Boy here does have an interesting suggestion as far as like what if we could define layout at the compiler level. I do think probably the weird part about this is even in this particular instance, we run into a thing where like I think you'd have multi-root. I think you'd have to like come up with a standard for like how things are gonna like get parsed by things. So I mean, I'll leave it to the team where like if that does make sense, I wonder if that would be a little bit more complicated to implement. But I mean, at the bare minimum, at least it's not. Again, at least this initial API is actually pretty explicit as far as being like, what are you doing? You're like modifying the Nuxt layout. But that's to be said. There is something to be said that maybe as like we get better at compiler tools and that kind of thing, that this component could be abstracted into an attribute just like script setup did. So very cool suggestion from Aussie Boy. All right, so we've taken a look at multiple basically roots. So here we can say default header. So let's actually go and refactor this real quick to everything so that we could say, ooh, so that's kind of the interesting thing. That would mean I need to define a custom component everywhere. So I couldn't necessarily, like, for example, here I have my default header h2, but if I wanted to drop it in, this means every single time I would need to disable the layout and then manually import it on every page. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, you know, in my case, like if I'm using the header to define where all but then at that point, I wonder, no, I don't really care for that. I don't know. It's interesting. There's a lot of fun things that you can play around with as far as the order of things, but it's nice to know that this is possible. So I'm going to go ahead and just add this feature, add custom slots for default layout. Boom. Okay. Now, what else should we take a look at? Let's go ahead and take a look back actually at the Vue 3 doc, shall we? Here we go. This is the table I was looking for earlier. So as people are starting to look at Nuxt 3 and play around with it, because again, it is in public beta, so there are still features that are coming. And once again, we stated it a lot at the beginning, but a quick reminder that it is not ready for production use. So again, you want to try it out for a small side project, something that can afford to be a little bit more experimental. I imagine the team would love your feedback in trying it out. But in the meantime, yes, don't switch your clients to Nuxt 3 just yet. It is coming. I believe the anticipated time frame is Q4 of this year. So overall, we can see here that there's Nitro. For those looking to sort of maybe figure out how can I leverage some of these Nuxt 3 things, such as the Nitro engine into my Nuxt 2 app, then you might want to start looking into Nuxt Bridge. This is a project that's totally worth checking out that basically allows you to do Nitro things on Nuxt 2, which is really great. And then we can see here, TypeScript support here is already supported. I think we'll save TypeScript for another stream because honestly, that is a whole thing in and of itself. We have the composition API that's fully supported, an options API, which is also supported, but we have an interesting addendum here regarding not recommended. I will have to talk, well, I'll be curious to hear what's sort of the idea here. But I think the idea, honestly, here is that at least my gut reaction, again, just from working with different Vue 3 code bases, it's more that like composition API is providing a lot of library authors a lot of this sort of flexibility in allowing to import things in ways. And so I think if anything at this point, when it comes to using Nuxt with TypeScript and this sort of thing, I do think a lot of its APIs will probably basically have a default support inside of composition API. And while you can combine it with options, like it's basically one of those, I would say, again, like composition API is probably more and more becoming a mandatory thing of becoming an intermediate advanced Vue developer. So we can see the component imports. We saw that working already, which was basically where I didn't have to import main nav and it automatically brought it in for me. Script setup, we played around with that, which is great. Auto imports, that's awesome. And then Webpack, we're on 5. Vite is currently experimental. And then, yeah, we have Nuxt for the Nuxt CLI. And so this is the thing that maybe we can talk about in sort of the last sort of bit of this as people have questions, is that what do we do about static site generation? And so at this point, it is basically I would say I would take this emoji to mean in progress. Why is that? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just full screen the VS Code. And let's take a look at what exactly is going on. Well, right now, let me go ahead and first push everything up. If we take a look at package.json, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we're used to. Package.json from Nuxt 3 shows us that we have basically 2 commands that we are used to using, which is Nuxt dev and Nuxt build. And it's basically leveraging the Nuxt CLI that I mentioned earlier inside of the table. Now, you probably are realizing that it's missing a command that a lot of us are used to using with Nuxt 2, which is Nuxt generate, which would basically take our app and compile that into a bunch of HTML files for us to deploy to Netlify, for example, or whatever hosting platform you're using. However, what you'll notice here is that if we run yarn build right now, which will kick off the Nuxt CLI basically generation, something a bit unexpected is about to happen. So drum roll. We already see, rather than creating a dist folder, first of all, it's creating this .output folder. And this might seem a little bit odd because after all, we're used to deploying dist. But at the same time though, at least with the yarn build, what it's doing here, as you'll notice, is that there's also a bunch of JavaScript in here, right? There are no HTML pages to be found. And while that might be a little bit odd at first, remember that first of all, right now, the static site generation is still not totally, basically it's not ready to be used. So the generate command doesn't exist. And they're figuring out what strategy they want to do as far as basically static generation and building of pages. And so what happens is right now is that because the Nuxt team, as usual, and in all of its amazingness, they have integrated with the various providers to make it very simple to deploy your app as far as it will go ahead and take all of this. And so this is what kind of has been for a lot of people, they've been waiting for things such as server-side rendering, because it's allowing you to basically run an engine that will use things like serverless functions to actually deploy said app. So if I go ahead right now, and let's say I'm going to go ahead and deploy this on Netlify, I'll go ahead and initialize it with the CLI, so ntl init. I'll create and configure a new site, and then this will be on the Ben Code Zen. So I'll call it build with Ben episode 18, just keep it nice and simple. And then this one, we know that is going to be basically so npm run build. We're gonna do the dist directory and then netlify functions, which is great. And then that should be that. Although great. All right, so we're gonna say config netlify deploy. And now when we push this should go up. And now let me go ahead and open this up inside of the dashboard to see what's going on. So here we go. We have the config deploy starting to run. So let's go ahead and let that do its thing for now. In the meantime, let's take a look at the chat here from Aussie Boy. So let's see. Zero reference in VS Code is from Volar, if I'm right. Couldn't get to work some settings. So yeah, so Volar does do a lot as far as doing code inference and auto completion, and especially when it comes to TypeScript support and showing those things. That is pretty okay. That's working. Yes, so basically that should be from Volar, but honestly, sometimes though when I'm in VS Code, it can there is quite a bit that sometimes it's hard to tell what's coming from where. But this here, let's see, zero references, slot header. I do believe this is a Volar thing. Although, you know what I can do to quickly check? Be fairly easy to do. We take Volar, here we go. We disable it, reload required, reloading our VS Code here. And then we can see whether or not it shows up inside of our view files. Looks like, nope, it's gone. So, I guess we have a good hypothesis that the Volar is trying to actually show you where references are being made to different things. So now that I have that, there we go. Should be better now. Let's go through, do the references. Okay. Let's go and take a look. It looks like it's previewed and out. And hey, check that out. So everything has been deployed. Now, you're probably wondering though, like how the heck did we take a .output folder and turn it into something that, well, has basically static pages? And then actually, to be clear, static pages might be a slight misnomer as far as like technicality goes. But here what we have, we can see that we clearly have the pages, and we can have the ability to, you know, do all the client side stuff. It's animating just fine. So if I do bento and like ice cream, switch it up, you know, again, things are working exactly as expected. And so this is basically sort of the beginnings of what I've seen some of the murmurings on Twitter regarding things like what they're like ISR, so like incremental static regeneration, or there's a lot of different terms being thrown out out there at this time. So like with Netlify is being called like distributed persistent rendering, but the idea here being like there is a movement right now to solve the problem of generating your whole site at build time, and leveraging things like server side rendering to basically help with that. So again, as like a quick review, it's like there you have, as for the most part, people had two options. They would like build all of your pages up front, so that could be like 5,000 pages, or you would have a server running, and then every time a client hit the server, it would generate the page once and then cache it so future people could get it. And then so there are pros and cons to both. And so naturally, I think like with a lot of opposing paradigms and that kind of thing, you come to a point where you want the ability to kind of have the best of both worlds. So what you probably want to do is pre-render or pre-generate like your most popular 100 pages that you know people are hitting constantly over and over again. So let's go ahead and get that done out of the way. And then from there, you can have other things that maybe less frequently hit. Those can be built later on and then cached accordingly. And so as a result, you get a reduction time as far as build time. But more importantly, it's really like a pretty big performance save, because you get to fine tune how those build processes basically get ingested throughout the workflow. So with that, I mean, this has been fun. Like, I don't know. I am very excited to start moving, honestly, some of my Nuxt 2 projects that for me can totally tolerate the as far as like the public beta-ness of it all. And so I'll be moving a lot of my Nuxt 2 things over to Nuxt 3. And to be honest, you know, for those wondering, Nuxt 3 will probably be dominating the streams here on Build with Ben for quite some time, because again, I love to see all of the different things that the team has done. Clearly, there's been a lot of thought, effort put into this. And as time goes on and things get basically worked with, like you can see here, there's just all these docs that we have yet to dive into, right? Like the fact that there's a server directory to support like API endpoints. So this is sort of like almost like a little bit of a prerequisite to like serverless functions. So you can basically build, rather than having like your client fetch everything, you're now starting to like actually send out requests into the, you know, the ether for API data that then returns back into your app, which is super exciting. So yes, to Arkneka's point, yes, Nuxt 3 will basically be dominating things going forward. So like, for example, I'll be converting my portfolio over into Nuxt 3. And then we'll be doing a lot of integration stuff with it as well. So I would 100% be pushing the limits when it comes to what the public beta can do for me. But it's very cool to have this Nuxt 3 as it begins to mature with the public beta release and people start to test things. Because here, as we have from Hermit Code, as libraries and communities continue to like the Vue 3 ecosystem overall is beginning to stabilize more and more as major dependencies like Nuxt and like component libraries like Vuetify have stable Vue 3 support. And then from there, I'm really interested to see how the community breaks out from there and comes up with their ideas, the tooling. And I mean, if the Vue 2 ecosystem is indication of anything, the Vue 3 ecosystem honestly is going to be a ton of fun. So yeah, it is very, very cool. I'm trying to see. Let's see what else in here. Is there anything else we want to kind of take a look at? So that was pretty straightforward. As far as sort of final, let me switch over to intermission now because we're good as far as I think the demo part. Okay. So I think the camera thing worked out pretty well, but there are times I think I might want to like figure out different scenes for intermingling, like more of a talk with less screen, and I'll need to figure that out. That said, but we'll be doing more fun stuff with Nuxt 3 for sure. And as far as, gosh, what do I have to talk about? Let's see. Boom, bum, bum. Okay, scheduling wise. So let me drop the schedule as always. So again, if you're looking to kind of keep up as far as what's going on, you can always check out bencodezen /schedule.io/schedule. And that will basically show you the next upcoming live stream, or if I'm giving a talk somewhere. I basically try to keep this thing as up to date as humanly possible. So be sure to check that out if you're looking for latest updates. And then in case you didn't know, I do actually do YouTube on top of the Twitch. And so at the moment, what we're basically doing is basically sort of re-uploading the Twitch episodes with a little bit of modification to edit some of like the intro part where I'm sort of just like messing with the mic and just making sure everything's okay. But over time, I think what we're going to see more and more is that basically we're going to start, my plan is to start cutting the Twitch episodes into more segments so that people can take it into more digestible chunks. This one, for example, might not be as necessary because as you can see, we kind of had like a broad overarching like look into Nuxt 3 public beta in this particular instance. But in other times when on other streams where we have things cut up into like different questions and different segments, I do think it would be nicer if people could just dive straight in rather than sort of looking at sort of a longer video and having to jump between different chapters. So with that said, I think that is all for today. I'm not gonna, I think this has been, yeah, this has been great. Does anyone have any other sort of like final questions or thoughts as far as, you know, I think we've had a lot of great questions in the chat regarding Nuxt. So again, once again, let me drop the official site down here inside of the chat for y'all, because it's, yes, this is going to be, man, team has done some fantastic work with this. And yeah, I think that's everything. All right. With that, let's go ahead and see who else is streaming and pass it off to them. All right, it looks like Alex is streaming. So let's go ahead and hop on over. Oh, Arkaneka here with the clutch suggestion. Yeah. So Docus, for those who don't know, actually, you know what? Let's switch over. I'm going to switch on over to the live stream. All right, let's take a look at Docus real quick. If you haven't heard of this yet, this is, oh, I hope, let me just drop that URL one more time. Docus is a, basically a, so if you're familiar with Vue ecosystem and you know about VuePress and VPress, this is like Nuxt, the Nuxt team's take on creating documentation, but powered by Nuxt ideas, which I'm super excited by because, again, if you haven't worked with any of the Nuxt team's product before, they're always incredibly thought out. And I know that a lot of empathy has been put into those. So check that out. And then again, I can't wait for that beta access to come in. I am also personally excited to move a lot of my own docs as well and just sort of those sort of sites over. And Arkneka, thank you so much for the shout out. I guess let me go ahead and drop the link for that real quick. So if Jamstack conf here, it is Vue 3 ecosystem. Yeah, here it is. Okay. I didn't want to announce it at the time. I think with the, yeah, I wasn't, anyways, let me drop that. But if you're curious on how the Vue 3 ecosystem is going, I did give a talk on that at Jamstack Conf recently. But more importantly, as always, I'm here streaming. I'm always happy to take Vue questions, Nuxt questions, Netlify questions. I'm here. So with that said, thanks everyone for hanging out. Let's see, let me switch over to intermission. I just realized, okay. So we talked about that, and we talked about, yep, various things. Okay, so once again, obviously with public beta opening, this is far from the end as far as excitement for Nuxt 3 things. I think the community will be testing out a lot of things. And again, I'll be taking the suggestions that I've gotten on Twitter and probably just lining up different things that we'll be building with those things. And so we'll see more and more Nuxt 3 content coming up. Jacob, love the pun. And yeah, I think with that, it's been great having you all. It's been a lot of fun. So hope you all have a wonderful day.